everyone, welcome to the community classroom. This is Dr. Tracey McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator, and what we're going to be talking about today is the 2020 census and the new classifications on the 2020 census. This is important because the census actually serves as the catalyst for U.S. public policy. It drives government funding decisions and helps determine political districts. It also serves as a bedrock for a great deal of justice research and social science research and medical research. And so as the population is becoming increasingly complex, we're going to talk about how the census is addressing these complexities with new data categories, particularly related to race and ethnicity. So we're going to look at parts of the new census form. We're going to look at this issue of self-identification, and we're also going to look at some of the confusion that is a part of the census related to these arbitrary classifications of black and white. We're going to look at the issue of using the paper census or digital census for reporting, and we're also going to touch on this confusion that seems to be out there related to this perception that people who are identified as Native Black Americans, they don't have a nationality. So we're going to touch on that also. Remember, if this video is seen on anything other than Dr. Tracey McCarthy, it is stolen and unauthorized. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start off with this discussion about self-identification, and this is very important because a lot of people have been wondering about, how they are going to complete the upcoming census. And so one of the important things to note is that it really is about self-identification. And so your responses on the census form related to race and ethnicity, they are based upon how you identify yourself versus how someone else identifies you. And before we go any further, let's touch on this dynamic related to this NPR reporting. One of the things that NPR has noted is that the 2020 census is changing how it will ask, quote unquote, black people to designate their race and their ethnicity. And so they are pointing out that the 2020 census is going to allow for people to identify as African American, Jamaican, Nigerian, etc. And so what this change means, according to the NPR, is that quote unquote black people in the United States will have to take a closer look at their family trees in order to answer this thorny question about their ethnicity. And one of the things that's concerning is that they noted that, and this is their quote, while many black immigrants can cite ties to a specific country, they did not believe that this was possible for U.S.-born African Americans. And so it's very odd. U.S.-born African Americans are American, and so of course they have ties to a specific country, just as Jamaicans have ties to Jamaica. And so that is clearly a misunderstanding about ethnicity and nationality and race. One important thing to note is that during the Obama administration, the classification of Negro and Oriental, those two were removed from the census. And that's a very important removal because basically it writes a number of ancestors of Native Black Americans pretty much out of history. And so that is important to note on the upcoming census. And another thing to note is that during this particular administration, so during the Trump administration, there are going to be the specific classifications so that you can actually write in your specific ethnic categories. And so you can see there's a memorandum regarding the 2020 census, and it came out in January 26th of 2018. And what they're pointing out is that they are now going to use two separate questions to address race and ethnicity. And part of the process has been, they have been sort of testing questions and trying to figure out the best way to deliver the 2020 census questions related to race and ethnicity. And so this process actually started in 2017 and then was presumably completed in 2018. One important thing for people to note is that it is understood by the census that the race and ethnicity categories are socio-political constructs, and they should not be interpreted as being scientific or anthropological in nature. And so that's important to note. That's why that self-identification is important. And so it's not as important what other people think about you, but it's important how you understand yourself in terms of the census. And we have additional notations regarding the categories, particularly related to being Hispanic and also this removal of Negro from the census. And this is very important because Negro has been the classification for people who are considered Native Black Americans and also people who are considered Black Indians for a very long time. And so when you look back at old census records, you will find Negro as a category and you will find mulatto as a category for those groups of people. And so the problem is that you're basically writing that group out of history. And so it's a very serious deletion there, and some people might want to consider that as a write-in in order to hold on to that identification historically for their families. So there are also other changes, and we're going to get into those. And what the census has provided is a breakdown of the categories. Now, again, one of the important things is in this one, you can actually write in information. And so this is going to be very helpful for people. And so you have the categories of American Indian or Alaskan Native. You have Asian, you have Black or African American, you have Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and then you have white. And so we want to take this opportunity to look at how this dynamic of race and ethnic identification, how it really is a socio-political construct. And this is important to understand because sometimes people think that categories such as Black and white are set in stone and that they are easily operationalized. They, however, are not. And so what you have on the screen off to the right are depictions of people who are classified as white according to the census. And so you can see that this really is not a clear-cut understanding of ethnicity or what people consider to be race. And white and Black are not races, by the way. And so you can see how this can become very confusing, and it's very unclear about how people even come to these conclusions about how they're going to place people in these categories. Another thing that's important to note is that for the white category, it actually specifies a person having origins in any of the original people. That's very interesting. And then for the Black category, it does not specify any of the original people. And, you know, there are some interesting dynamics going on in terms of historical research about who the original people were in Africa and who the original people were in Europe. And so again, the important thing is that this is based upon self-identification. So however you are understanding your race and ethnicity is what matters the most. And some people will, of course, be able to identify based upon a number of categories, and that will be allowed in this particular census. And so people can, you know, give the entire picture of their ancestry, not only for themselves, but also for posterity. And so it's used for government purposes, but it will also be used for your family members, your descendants down the line when they try to trace their own heritage, and they want to understand that heritage more clearly. And here you can see the sample questions for the forms that are going to be coming out. And you can see over to the left that there is the question regarding Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish ancestry. And so again, but remember that Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish, those are not races, those are ethnic qualifiers, and it can be related to somebody from a variety of countries, a variety of nationals. And so you can actually specify, you know, get very specific with that origin and actually print in the clarifier down at the bottom if yours is not listed. And so let's say a person is from El Salvador. They can actually put that in. Okay, so then over to the right, you see there are questions regarding race. And remember, when a person is Hispanic, they can actually have a variety of races in terms of their identifiers. And so on the right-hand side, there is the box for identifying in terms of race. And so, again, these are not biological racial categories, and these aren't even the scientific categories that are used for race, but these are the ones that are used for the census. And so now you have qualifiers for white. And you have, for example, a person can identify now some of their roots in terms of ethnicity. And so this means that people are going to have to do a little digging to make sure that they understand their heritage in terms of ethnicity. And so you can, have in there German, Irish, English, Italian, Lebanese, Egyptian. You can have a variety of things based upon the categories that you just saw on the other screen. And so if it's not up here, you can also just write in whatever your specific category is. It's the same thing for Black or African American. Now you can actually specify your national origin. And so you also have the American Indian or Alaskan Native question, and you can print the name of the enrolled or principal tribe. You can print in the actual name of your tribe, whether we're talking about a recognized tribe in terms of the civilized tribe or your particular clan. So we're going to use clan or your nation. And so you can actually write those in as many as apply to you. Again, this is about self-identification, so this isn't about anyone else's identification of you. And also you have the varieties in terms of Asian ancestry. And so you can check one of those off, but there's also, again, a space for specificity, particularly if your group is not listed. What's really interesting is that they have check marks for the Asian categories, but not check marks for specificity for the other categories such as Black, White, and American Indian. And one of the things that is noted is that for the white category, which has pretty much been like a standard category, and so there hasn't been this belief in a need for clarification. And so there is the clarification that is going to be provided on this particular census. And there is sometimes a misunderstanding and a belief that people who have quote unquote white identity, that they fully understand their ethnic heritage. And that is a misunderstanding because that's not actually correct. Many people who identify as white are very unclear about the totality of their ethnicity. And so this is also very important for them as it is for those who are identifying as quote unquote Black. And so it will be very interesting to see how, the results of this census come out when the results are made public. And so it will be very interesting to see how people are categorizing themselves according to ethnicity versus simply according to these colors. And many people are in support of increasing the detail in terms of data associated with both quote unquote Black and quote unquote white people who have non-Hispanic origin. So this is really the first time where everyone is going to be able to be more specific about their ethnicity. One important thing to note is that the census is going to be available online. And there are some speculations about who is probably going to complete the census online and who is probably going to want to do the paper copy. Now, there are benefits to the online, of course, is convenience. However, there are benefits to the paper census, and one is accuracy. So you get to be very specific and accurate in terms of your understanding. You're not limited to what's on the computer screen. Also security. And so in terms of cybersecurity, if you do it in paper form, your material is a little bit more secure. And you'll also have a hard copy, and you can make a copy of that hard copy to keep in your family records for your future descendants. Those of you who are doing ancestry research, you've probably come to the conclusion that you can't get certain census data until it's 70 years old. And so there are some records that are unavailable to you right now that are important records. And so if you actually have a physical copy, the hard copy of your original, you can have that for your descendants, and so they won't have to wait or be searching online. And that time frame is important because of privacy issues, and so you don't want to have all of that census data just sitting out there for everyone, because the census can be very, very personal. So those of you who've been doing your ancestry research, you can see that you have things related to economics on the census, you have racial identification that we've been talking about on the census, and so for some people that information is very sensitive, and so it's not available for public use. And so at any rate, these are some important reasons to consider using the paper census versus the online format. And just as a quick reminder, for those of you who've been doing your ancestry work and you've noted that your ancestors were identified as Negro or colored or mulatto or Indian, you can actually write that information in. And in terms of your nation, some of you might put in your clan, and so it will vary based upon the individual. Also, for those of you who are doing your ancestry work and you are finding in your ancestry European heritage that you didn't know that you had before, you can also write that in, and so you can be very specific. So if your ancestry is Irish, you can now put in, Irish. You can put in that your ancestry is from Scotland. You can put in those specifiers now. And so an important thing in terms of race and ethnicity is to try to capture the totality of your ancestry. And so you want to capture all of that is possible on the census form. And this may mean that you pretty much have to ignore those qualifiers that are given to quote unquote black and quote unquote white people. And so you know, in being specific, you may have to sort of overcome some of the previous bias that you may have had in your own head about your own ancestry and what those arbitrary colors actually mean. And as we close this out, there's some quick information. If people are looking for some new job opportunities, there are opportunities with the Census Bureau, so people can apply to be a census taker. There is a video and the information here for that. In terms of getting started with that, it's very easy to apply. It's also a very flexible schedule. It gives people an opportunity to earn extra income if they're looking for that, and also to build their resume. And so there are lots of opportunities with the Census Bureau for people to consider if that's something they are interested in. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.